Today is the first day of February. It is Friday, February 1st, and normally on Fridays we do weekly check-ins. However, we missed one day of math this week due to our field trip yesterday, so instead of a weekly check-in, we are going to do a math lesson. Today we're doing Eureka Math, Module 4, Lesson 5. And the learning goal should seem familiar to you. It says, I can use the RDW method to solve word problems. Now, you might think, wait, but so I already know how to use the RDW method to solve word problems. You're right. We're not learning a new method or anything like that. We already know that R stands for, D stands for, and W stands for. Yeah, but what we're going to be doing is using some of the new math learning we've been doing this week, thinking about fractions and how it's related to division and how division is related to fractions. And we're going to use that as we solve word problems. An example is this one, your problem of the day. It says a total of 2 yards, it should say 2 yards, of fabric is used to make 5 identical pillows. How much fabric is used for each pillow? We had to do R first. Read to figure out what the question's asking. What is the question asking us? Niv?
How much fabric is used to make?
Good. And what important information do we need in order to figure out how much fabric is used to make each pillow? Arnav?
There's a total of 2 yards.
There's 2 yards of fabric.
And they're used to make 5 identical.
Used to make 5 identical pillows. Very good. Then we can move on to the D part, drop. Are we taking little bits and adding them together? Or are we taking a big part and dividing it up into smaller pieces? A big part, good. So we take a big piece of tape. And that tape is going to represent all of our fabric. A total of how much fabric do we have?
2 yards.
Let's label it as 2 yards. Now I'm going to divide that or split it up to make how many identical pillows?
5.
1, 2, 3, 4 lines. We'll divide it into 5 identical sized pillows. We're trying to find out how much fabric it takes to make 1 pillow. Okay, looking around the room, I see some of your tape diagrams don't look like this. That's okay. Okay, today, that's the whole point. So you can learn how to draw these kinds of tape diagrams. So how can I find out how much is necessary to make 1 pillow? I take the 2 yards, and I'm splitting it equally into 5 equal sections. So let's write an equation. Geffen? 2 divided by 5. Very good. A very common mistake here, people will say, oh, it's 5 divided by 2 because 5 is bigger than 2, and if I want to divide something, I always have to start with the bigger number. Is that true?
No.
Could I take 1 pie and share it evenly amongst 4 people? If I took 1 pie and shared it among the people at the green table right now, what fraction would each person get?
1/4.
1/4. But 1 is smaller than 4. Can I divide a smaller number by a bigger number? Absolutely. How do I know here that 2 is my whole? Talk at your table groups. The problem tells us that we are starting with a total of 2 yards of fabric. So you have to act it out in your head. I'm not taking 5 pillows and splitting them up to become 2 yards of fabric, right? I'm splitting up 2 yards of fabric. So how do I do 2 divided by 5? Well, I know that I can interpret division as a fraction, right? So this is the same as 2 divided by 5, or 2/5. So each pillow takes 2/5 of a yard. Shivani, what is this question asking us to figure out? We want to know how much paint each class had to paint their mural. Joseph, what important information do we need in order to figure that out?
Someone donated 14 gallons.
There's 14 gallons of paint altogether,
And there are 4 classes.
and 4 classes wanted to split that paint equally. Okay, now, we know we're trying to figure out how much paint each class had. We know the important information. There's 14 gallons of paint altogether. We have to split it into 4 classes, split it by 4 classes. So now we have to move on to step D, which stands for? Draw. Go ahead and draw a tape diagram that demonstrates or depicts what this situation is saying. All together, we have how much paint? 14 gallons. And we have to split it evenly by how many classes? 4 classes. So draw a question mark for the part that we're trying to figure out. We're trying to figure out how much 1 class gets. Okay, very nice. Let's move on to W. Let's write an equation. What are we doing here? Are we adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing? Dividing. What is our whole? What are we starting with? Luke? 14 gallons of paint. Good. And we're dividing it equally by how many classes, Luke? What's our divisor? 4. Oh my gosh, my pen is failing me. Okay, good. So my equation is 14 divided by 4. How can I write that as a fraction? Sawyer? 14 divided by 4. We can think of that fractions bar as like divided by. 14 divided by 4. What do we know about 14 fourths? It's an improper fraction. Are there some holes hiding in there? How many fourths does it take to make one whole? 4 fourths makes one whole. Good. So how many holes are hiding in there? 3. And if I take out 3 holes, how many fourths did I use up? 12 fourths. Good. So how many are left? Which is 1/2. Now is it 3 1/2 drops of paint? It's 3 1/2. So each class gets 3 1/2 gallons of paint to use. Very nice. Let's look at part B. Okay. How much paint will 3 classes use? Draw a tape diagram. Well, we have to do R actually first. So now the question is asking us, how much paint will 3 classes use? What's the important information? We know that we're trying to find out how much 3 classes is going to use, and 1 class needs how much? 3 1/2. See how your previous answer now becomes the important information you need? Write down what the question's asking for part B and the important information for part B. Then do D. Draw a tape diagram that would show this. So in this case, we're not starting with a big piece of tape, right? We want to add up 3 small sections of tape. 3 1/2 for the first class, 3 1/2 for the second class, and 3 1/2 for the third class. Go ahead and make sure that you draw a tape diagram, and then let's add. Let's add the whole numbers part first. What's 3 plus 3 plus 3? 9. Okay. What's 1/2 plus another half plus another half? 3 halves. Very good. But we know that there's a hole hidden in there. So the answer is 10 and 1/2 what's? Gallons. Very good. Go ahead and jot that down.